A man haunted by addiction confesses a violent secret that may have cost him everything. Today kicks off a new series where I break down how I compose music for films I've actually worked on in the past, starting with AA, the Alex and Ariel Story. So before we dive into the score, we have to kind of go over the setup for the scoring process and maybe kind of look at some of the discussions and conversations that we had with the director. The biggest thing that we're trying to figure out when we're working with the director is what is the emotion that the audience needs to feel. We didn't need music throughout the whole thing. There was really specific parts that the director was looking to get a very specific emotional impact. We can really kind of break this one down into two cues. So the first cue is really just kind of like the emotional setup. It's a very kind of underscore, tender, kind of light piece. For the main scene that the director was really needing music for, I asked them, what is the emotional impact that you're going for here? What is the emotion you want the audience to feel? And he was very specific. We really had one word, and that was uncomfortable. It was pretty open to how I wanted to interpret it and what I wanted to do. So we had pretty much free reign to create a palette that I saw fit based upon what I was looking at and how I was interpreting the film, as long as it was getting the emotion across to the audience that the director was wanting to drive home. Taking a look at the film, when it came in, again, we had a pretty big bit of footage kind of before we needed to start scoring. So everything around here, it's basically Alex, the main character. He's kind of coming into an already existing AA meeting, sits down, looking pretty terrible, and kind of starts to meet the group, open up and talk about his addiction, how he got started with drinking, that he's basically just kind of hinting that he's at an all-time low, but he's really more or less just kind of talking about his addiction and how Ariel, his significant other, kind of helped pull him back from addiction. So before we even kind of listen to that scene and what we scored to, we're just going to check out the actual clip here. A lot of this is just the footage, no audio in the actual film. We're really set as the composer, when you don't have any dialogue, to really drive the narrative and drive the story. So there's no audio here. Here it comes in. You'll notice a little bit coming in and out.
I tried to quit many times before her, but this time was different. I said, I'll do this for her.
Throughout this piece, it's clips of them hanging out, being romantic. Life is good. Cuts back to him giving his testimony on, kind of what's happened and where he's at. I wanted to write one section, but then kind of bridge the two cues with kind of moving into more of an ominous kind of undertone that moves out into the next cue, and it just kind of slowly builds. And the second cue that we'll get to later does have a pretty drastic arc when we get to it. But let's just take a listen to the cue that we've got.
Her.
Just keeping it really simple.
She saved me. I tried to quit many times before her, but this time was different. I said, I'll do this for her. And so I got sober for 2 years. Yeah, she stood by me through it all. And I just lost everything.
Just kind of taking a minute and looking at the instruments that we used. A lot of this was pretty simple. A lot of warm pads in the low end, and also cinematic piano by Spitfire Audio. We used a good bit of that. The reason I kind of played around with two different pianos here, this cinematic piano by Spitfire Audio. So it's the same piano on both of these tracks. However, each track has independently a different amount of reverb. I actually ended up sending the reverb, but then also putting a little bit more of a hollow reverb on the actual track. And I have different amounts depending on the track. That this one has 77%. This one has 29%. I originally set it up for pre-fader just so that it was bathed in reverb, but I wasn't getting the effect that I wanted. So I actually ended up just putting 2 different tracks with different amounts of reverb on each one. And it was just for effect. I wanted specific chords. Like when I hit this D minor 9, I wanted a lot more reverb, and then less reverb where the actual piano came through, like on the G sus4. So it was really to accentuate the different parts in the scene that was going on at the time. So as I hit each chord, there's something different happening. So again, a little more ambient, a little more direct with the chord, a little more of the dry piano, more reverb. And then if you notice, the piano's completely cut out here, and the pads kind of automate and swell in and out. So I've got this Midnight Waves plugin here, and this one is Deep Churn. So 2 different pads with completely different textures. And again, they are, if you look at them, they are automated in and out of each other. So as one kind of rises on this particular scene where they're kind of embracing each other, so it was such a beautiful scene. I just really wanted to highlight it with a really beautiful pad on this section. And then as that one kind of drops out, the other one starts to kind of come in. And this is where he's telling his story to the AA group. We didn't really want the piano right here. We wanted it a little bit lighter, so you weren't getting that percussive effect of the piano for this section. And throughout this, we're highlighting just a little bit with the BBC Symphony Orchestra Violins 1. Just really light. Using flautando strings for that kind of light and airy vibe that we have going on here, and really kind of matches up nice with some of the pad choices that we have. And then throughout the initial part, we're just kind of outlining our chord changes with the harp. A lot of little things that are very simple on their own, but together kind of add up to the sum of a really beautiful cue. That's what we were kind of going for here. Coming out, we hit this. We're coming out of an E7, going to a G major, and then we're going to a G minor. So we're switching. This is kind of how we do our changeover. So harmonically, I wanted to kind of keep it close, make it make sense, but I wanted to have an obvious shift in the emotion. And so harmonically, we wanted to move out of that a little bit. So we actually put the third in the bass to really accent, that minor third, switching from the B natural to the, should be a B flat over G minor. Obviously, I didn't put that in. But yeah, we have a G major and then a G minor over B flat in the bass is what we're doing here. So it's that minor third movement of the bass note. In this particular scene, he is basically laying in bed, kind of just chilling. Her phone goes off. He picks it up, notices something that kind of sets him off. Looks like she's potentially been maybe kind of texting with someone. She tries coming in and kind of talking to him. He brushes her off, shows her the text message, and basically storms off. And then it basically cuts back to the AA meeting where he's going over how that kind of sent him over the deep end. Kind of hear the music start to shift there, but we wanted to really gradually get into this. So let's take a listen to this part. This is the bridge between Q1 and Q2. Really just wanted to play around with drones and ambient textures, some dissonance, cymbal moans. Come back down. And this is where it actually starts to get pretty dark. We have basically let's turn back on our audio and kind of see where our story's going.
I got so mad that I bought another bottle. And I went back to the apartment planning to give her a piece of my mind. And there she was, and I just unloaded.
And I think things like that are really important. You've really got to listen to the dialogue and pay attention to what is going on in the story. So with what he said there, he's starting to admit to the AA group what he's about to admit to them that he did and what's happened is pretty dark. And then the director obviously cuts to this scene setting up for what actually happened. And the kind of terrible thing that he does. So this is where you've got to kind of make that shift happen with the music. So we've got to start working on taking it somewhere. And this is where, if you kind of notice up at the top in my arrangement track, I've got markers set, and I didn't even put notes in. I know that there's certain spots that I want things to happen, right? So I know how many bars I've got, if it's going to land on a downbeat, what do I need to do? Do I need to adjust the tempo? What does that look like? And that's really something that you want to do in the setup process. So before you even start writing music, you know where you're landing and you know how long you've got to write specific pieces of music. So we've got her kind of waiting for Alex to come home. And we're just kind of hinting at some tension right now. One thing I will say is if you are sensitive to scenes of violence, I would probably maybe not watch this part, maybe just kind of listen, because the final cut that the director did does make it a little bit more aggressive, like it's more intense with the edits that he did. This isn't as bad in the rough cut that I got, but if you are sensitive to that, you might not want to watch this. And this, again, was an important part where Alex kind of takes the bottle out and kind of starts to show her basically what he's been doing and where he's at. So we wanted to go really dark. When I initially sent this to the director for notes on the first kind of rough cut that I did, maybe 2, they were like, it's not intense enough. And I thought it was pretty intense. So we ended up going, okay, let's just take it up a notch. So I tried to really like kind of enhance and just hit home with just the terror.
You're worthless! A good for nothing woman! After everything we've been through, where are you going, huh?
All right, so that scene is pretty intense. So obviously, if we kind of zoom out and look at our cue, we have a whole lot more going on here versus our first cue that we've got. Because this is a short film that only really had 2 main cues, I didn't break it up into multiple sessions. I really just did it in one because it's 2 cues with a bridge. But let's take a look at what we've got. Stay tuned for part 2 of Behind the Score coming next week. I'll be breaking down how the final cue brings everything together. Hit subscribe so you'll get the notification as soon as it's live.